begin our ops committee meeting this morning, and we'll start with a call to order.
We'll call Bolinas Fire. City of San Rafael.
Darren White, present.
Thank you. Kentfield Fire.
Mark Pomey, present.
Novato Fire District.
Here.
Stinson Beach.
Here.
Town of Ross. Oh, I'm sorry. Stinson Beach is here. Town of Ross.
Here.
Thank you. City of Larkspur. County of Marin Fire.
Here.
Thank you. Marin Wood CSD.
Renwood will be absent this morning.
Thank you. Sleepy Hollow Fire.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. Town of Corte Madera. Town of San Anselmo. City of Mill Valley. Inverness Fire. Inverness here.
Jim Fox.
That's what I thought. Okay, Inverness is here. Muir Beach.
Here.
Thank you. Southern Marin Fire.
Here.
Thank you. Town of Fairfax.
Here.
Did I miss anyone?
Hey, Lori, this is George from Bolinas. I think I was on mute.
Okay, very good. Anybody
This is-
else I missed?
This is Dan Schwartz from Larkspur. I'm here now.
Thank you. We have 13 present. That makes a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 3, agenda adjustments. So do we have any requests for adjustments to our agenda? Seeing none. Public comments, open time for public comments and expression.
Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak on anything not on the agenda at this time? Please raise your hand. I see none. Thank you.
Okay, we'll close the meeting to public comment at this time and move on to item number 5, planning.
I'm sorry, very quickly, Lori, would you mind explaining how to, if you're on a phone, how to unmute yourself?
Oh, yes. If you want to raise your hand, do *9, and if you need to unmute yourself, do *6 on your phone. Thank you.
So we're going to give that just a couple moments there.
*9 to raise your hand. *6 to mute. I see none. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to item 5, planning and program managers report. We'll receive a verbal report. Will that be from you again, Ann?
Yes. Lori, would you mind making sure I can share my screen?
Should be good to go. Let's see if it works.
Yeah, it's working now. Are you able to see this slide?
Yes.
Great. We have a very full agenda today, so I'm going to be very brief. Very quickly, we are hiring. We're looking for a management analyst who will handle some of the administrative duties that we have as a 2 employee organization. And we've been very appreciative of Lori's work, but we will need somebody in that position as a permanent person. So we are recruiting for that. Vegetation management specialist, we are recruiting for 1 position for the chipper program, and then holding on to those applications for any future positions. And then we will be recruiting for a grant specialist in the near future to handle our resident grant program. As an FYI, Mark and I attended the Association of Environmental Professionals Conference, which is kind of a long-standing organization that provides education for environmental professionals, case studies, case law, updates on future exemptions under CEQA, things like that. So we presented actually on the JPA model as a way to scale up wildfire risk reduction in California, and received a lot of great input and ideas, and made a lot of really good connections there. And then this item is a little bit old, sorry about that. No projects are going to the board in May. We did move 2 projects to the board in April. No projects are going to the board in May, but we are going to be moving our work plan to the board. So that's plenty to put on the agenda for May. Upcoming meetings, that May board meeting is on the 19th at 3 p.m. as an FYI, and that's it for me.
Thank you, Ann.
Mhm.
Like to open the meeting for any public comment.
At this time, if anyone would like to speak on the planning program manager's report, please raise your hand. I see none at this time. Thank you.
Okay, we'll close the item to public comment and move on to the consent calendar, where we have minutes of the April 14, 2022 Operations Committee meeting. So the recommendation is to approve as presented or edit with approval. Our Ops Committee meeting minutes from April 14th. Lori, would you like to conduct a roll call vote?
I need a first and a second, please.
I move consent. Bill Tyler, Nevada.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a second?
I'll second it.
First by Bill Tyler, second by Darren White. Roll call, Bolinas Fire District,
Yes.
City of San Rafael,
Yes.
Pitfield Fire,
Staying.
Nevada Fire District,
Aye.
Stinson Beach,
Yes.
Town of Ross,
Yes.
City of Larkspur,
Yes.
County of Marin Fire.
Aye, support.
Thank you. Marinwood is absent still. Let's see. Sleepy Hollow Fire,
Yes.
Inverness Fire District,
Yes.
Muir Beach CSD,
Yes.
Southern Marin Fire,
Yes.
Town of Fairfax.
Yes.
Did I miss anybody in roll call? I have Mill Valley absent, Corte Madera and San Anselmo absent. Passes by, it's not unanimous vote, one abstention. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to discussion items. Proposed modifications to next year's work plan development process. The recommendation is to receive an update regarding ideas for next year's work plan process and provide feedback. Would that be Ann and Mark or one or the other?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share my slides here. I'd like to end each work plan development season with ideas for how to make the process more smooth for next year. So I first presented to the ATC at our meeting on the 28th and have since incorporated some other ideas from ATC members into this presentation. This was included in your packet, your agenda packet, so I won't go into too much detail, but I'd love to hear if you have any additional thoughts for me. So one of the ideas that came about during this planning process was to invite our land management agency partners to help kick off the process each year. So that includes Marin County Parks and Open Space, state parks, national parks, and Marin Municipal, and other entities who have a stake in the work that we do. They have internal planning processes that are relevant to our timeline and our planning processes. So we've invited actually Jim Chika to present today on their internal deadlines and planning processes. We'll invite them to take part in future kickoff meetings for future work plan development seasons. I'd also like to invite the Operations Committee to present your strategy to the ATC each year and build that communication into the process. We'll be continuing to work on complying with the Brown Act while also creating opportunities to collaborate. As you know, it's a challenge to create a collaborative process and also comply with the Brown Act, especially using the portal and needing to limit the functionality of the portal in order to comply with the Brown Act. So we'll continue working on that and working through all of those issues. Provide guidance to member agencies on what data the Citizens Oversight Committee would require. This is an idea that came from Southern Marin Fire to really clarify and incorporate into the planning process each year what the COC is going to be looking for. So everybody's set up for success once the COC, the Citizens Oversight Committee, starts asking for information about the previous year's projects. In addition, we'll be fine-tuning the web portal that members of the ATC and some of you and staff have been using. We'd like to improve the downloading capabilities for the web portal. That ended up being a challenge this time around. We'd also like to incorporate the use of Marin maps, since so many of our member agencies are already using Marin map. We'd like to explore becoming members and incorporating that into the process. We'd also like to explore the idea of adding a way to enter percentages for projects as kind of a percentage of your core budget, say, to simplify the budgeting process in the future, especially when there's still unknowns in terms of total budget available. That idea came from Todd Lando. We'd also like to explore the idea, this also came from Todd, of developing standard project descriptions and additional standard language to use in the portal to help folks create their proposals in a more consistent way and really streamline that process. Maybe reduce some of the number of questions that we have in the portal to make it easier and more streamlined. And also keep exploring and keep working on a way to use the portal to track projects and implementation in the future. We'd also like to set dates early in the process to make sure we can keep our calendars open. So we have some tentative dates for ATC meetings and operations committee meetings already set for next year. We weren't able to do this quite as early this time around, but I think it'll really benefit everyone next time around. We'd also like to propose deadlines for the process of developing proposals and budgets and move those even further earlier in the calendar so that we are a bit more, set up for success at the end of the process. So we have some tentative dates for the JPA-wide proposals being ironed out earlier in the process so that we know that core budget earlier rather than later. So, and that's it for my presentation, but I'd love to hear if you have additional thoughts and would love to have a discussion if you'd like. And you're also welcome to just email me your thoughts and ideas.
I support those suggestions, Anne. Thank you for sharing that with us, and especially calendaring well in advance helps everybody, I think, get focused. Having those deadlines to drive the deliverables is great.
Great, thank you. Well, if there are no more comments, feel free to let me know if you come up with some additional ideas and we can incorporate them into the process next year if we can. Thank you.
Would you like to go to the public?
Yes, at this time, I'd like to open the meeting to public comment, if any.
Thank you. At this time, is there anybody wishing to speak regarding this item? Please raise your hand. No comments. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to close the meeting to public comment and move on to item B. Update from Marin County Parks, Marin County Open Space District on internal planning processes and timelines. Recommendation, receive a summary of internal planning processes and timelines for Marin County Parks, Marin County Open Space District, and provide feedback.
Great. I guess that's to me. Thank you so much for the invitation. I really appreciate it. And Mark, members of the Operations Committee, thanks for having me here today. I have a PowerPoint presentation I'd like to walk through today. You know, what this goal is really to just kind of do what Chief Tyler had just mentioned, which is to set some deadlines to drive those deliverables, meaning having a successful collaboration. And I want to thank all of you and all of your staff for a really successful partnership going into the upcoming fiscal year. I think we've developed a bunch of really good projects that have gone, into the application, and we're in the process of refining those with your staff. And we want to appreciate everybody for reaching out in advance. Today's goal is to set some more concrete dates to help us further refine and improve the planning process. So let me share my screen. All right, are y'all seeing this? I got to get it into presentation mode, but are you seeing that first? Okay, great. All right. Okay, great. Well, I have not made this presentation available to Ann yet, but at the conclusion of the presentation, I'll send it to her, and this will be sent out to all of you so that you can share with your staff. This is our vegetation management planning process. This timeline, this color-coded timeline, we actually shared to the ATC, I think back in February, in a very unrefined way, but it was just sort of to set some, rough benchmarks about the types of conversations and phases of projects we'd like to see along the way. Today's goal is to kind of educate everybody a little bit about what happens internally in our agency, to help frame kind of why we're setting some of these deadlines, and also to set some targets for your agencies. Basically, in April of every year, we have a requirement to present our whole slate of projects that involve vegetation management, things that we're going to do on Marin County Parks and Open Space lands. We present that to the Parks and Open Space Commission every April. So this is a list of projects including restoration projects, fire field projects, trail improvements, all kinds of things that have to occur on our lands, which, backing up from the April presentation requires some planning and coordination with each of your departments to really refine the various vegetation management projects that some of you have identified. And this works well, really. We already have had the March 31st deadline for entries into the MWPA portal, but what we're needing is some additional buffer time and planning prior to the submission deadline so that we can coordinate with your staff to really make sure we're setting ourselves up for success. So basically, I'm going to walk through these slides. I've got backgrounds that correspond to the colors in this so that you can print this, staff can print this and refer to some targets for each phase of our timeline. What we're going to talk about is in January is what we're going to call the notice phase, which is really when we just want early engagement with each of your agencies to hear about your ideas for projects. So we want to hear it before the end of January of each year, each planning year. And then January through March, once we've had that initial conversation, we're working with you to kind of refine a final draft that then would be submitted, jointly in spirit into the MWPA portal. And then after that's been submitted, we're working with you to refine the proposal, which would get into more of logistics and project planning. And then we kick off that project season starting in July. And a reminder that throughout all these phases, I'm not going to go into CEQA today, but obviously there's a planning and sort of compliance piece that goes through all of these phases that's just ongoing. We're not going to get into a lot of that today, but just a reminder that is an important component of all this planning. So the January phase, this is the notice phase, where really all we're looking for from our partner agencies is an email, a phone call, anything just to connect so that your staff can pitch a new project to us. And this is super high level. It can be just 2 or 3 sentences. Gold star to Central Marin Fire Agency. I got Todd's permission to share an email that he had submitted. This is all we really need. So Todd writes, "Hey, Jim and Nate, our fire department would like to offer some funding for some eucalyptus removal. We're open to a range of treatments. What do you think?" This is a perfect example of how to kick the conversation off, and it puts the ball in our court to be able to reach out and say, "Hey, think that sounds good. We've had a successful partnership in this area before. Why don't we talk more about what that looks like and see if this is something we can partner on for next year. That's it. That's all we really need prior to the end of January. Oops, I don't know. You may have to move your video tiles just to get to see the right side of that last one. But basically, contents of this is what we're looking for, something that talks about the location, the scope of what the work is, and the timing of that work. Okay, if we've met all those conditions, and I think we've successfully made it through the notice phase, and hey, we're on track to kind of get this thing moving for that fiscal year. So although we're here today talking about MWPA, I mean, I know there's a lot of different ways that we interact, you know, as partners, and it's not just MWPA funding, but it's important that we keep this in mind for really all projects and all funding sources. So whether it's a defensible space project, or it's fire road projects, or it's grazing, evacuation routes, right? It's all vegetation management. It's all stuff that we have to present to our commission and that they expect to know about in advance. So that's why the prior planning is really important. And again, the timeline does come up in different times of the year for opportunities for funding. I think we've got a really good structure, thanks to Ann and Mark and you all for setting these deadlines for the MWPA funding. But as we all know, grants pop up. Hey, I got this last minute request. That's all great. I mean, we can look at that, but honestly, what we're going to need to do is look at whatever those opportunities are for the following year if we haven't been able to discuss that in January. You know, so we're looking really at trying to plan a year in advance, just like we are with MWPA. You know, and I was hesitant to even talk about this. I didn't put it in the slide, but you know, we have volunteer efforts and small scale things, and even emergency projects, right? Those are kind of all things that are exempt from this, but we're talking about projects that kind of rise to a level where there's some significant planning that needs to occur, and volunteer efforts and sort of vegetation mods in people's backyards. That's not really that. And unfortunately, in the world that we're in, everything's an emergency, but we're committed to partnering with all of you to be looking in advance down the road and making sure that we're, you know, planning the right way to make these things successful. Okay, so we made it through January. We're in the final draft phase now. What we'd want to achieve before the end of that submission deadline in March 31st, right, before things go into the timeline, or excuse me, into the portal, is to have something that's more of a final draft, right? Something that would kind of be a one-pager that shows an outline of what would have been submitted through the portal. And big props, another gold star we're handing out today to Marin County Fire, Gavin Albertoli. Did a great job submitting a proposal for the White Hill Fire Road fuel reduction project. And he had a great, really organized template that was a one-page document that included some of the objectives that I bulleted here. I don't need to rattle them off, but they're great reference points and things that are helpful, high-level descriptions of your objectives, again, like where this is going to be, you know, demonstrating that there's a knowledge of what the area is, the treatment area, and what that prescription is. And again, timing and funding, all that kind of stuff. I mean, we're talking about MWPA funding, but like I said, this applies to other areas. So having clarity on what that funding source is also helpful. And another important component of that is the maps. I know that Panorama provides a lot of technical support, and I think folks in different departments have different levels of experience with mapping skills or the technology around that. So we're willing to help support that too. But what we really need is, in that description, is just a location map. And this isn't really fancy. We just needed something that's zoomed out that shows kind of the location of the treatment area in terms of the surroundings, and then something that's a bit more zoomed in at the parcel level that shows, you know, the study area. And so this is one example that does that. It's here, this is in White Hill. You see where the treatment area is in terms of the location, where in Marin, and then you zoom into the parcel level that shows, you know, the property ownership and what the suggestion is. So this is like a corridor buffered out. Hey, this is an area we want to look at. It's a study area with you. And then, you know, an opportunity to refine that as we work through the timeline. That's all we need before things are submitted to, you know, to the portal. Moving on from there, once we've all the, you know, the hard work has been done at that point. We've collaborated We've basically in spirit agreed upon an intent to partner with you and create a successful project. After that's been submitted, you know, it really comes down to working through logistics. Like there are many administrative tasks that we do have to do on our end, just in terms of getting access to our lands from the various contractors. You know, it could be biologists, it could be equipment operators. It's a variety of people that may need to study the land ahead of time. And we require right to enter permits and different permits to be able to do that, including issuing keys and all kinds of things. But what our goal is in May and June to be able to create a shovel ready project, so that when July comes around and we've started that project season, you know, we're good to go. And again, it's July arrow. We can't always guarantee that we're going to be ready July 1st to be able to completely kick this thing off. But once July rolls around, we'll have been 90% of the way there. And a lot of it's in the details and kind of refining the project goals. And understanding kind of really not just at the parcel level, but at the sub parcel level, at the plant community level, at the backyard level, what each treatment's going to be, because it varies widely depending on vegetation type and stuff like that. So, and there's training and other things that will happen. So sometime, you know, from July on, that's when we're getting it ready to go and to kick off the project. That means tools on the ground and boots on the ground. Last slide here, and thanks everyone for your time and struggling through my voice today. I really appreciate it. Our team, you know, I want to continue to be your point person for project proposals. I think your staff know that. I'm glad to see that there are folks from the ATC attending today, and this presentation will be brought back to that group as well. But just a little bit of background about some of the other folks that are involved on our end. It's, you know, Michonne Martin, who I think many of you know. She's our Chief of Natural Resources. Nate Clark has a really strong field presence. He's our Fuels Project Coordinator. Sarah Minnick helps with a lot of the logistics and planning and partnering on scopes of work. She's our fire ecologist. And then Michelle Julene is our compliance person that helps us through sort of you know, all of the compliance things in partnership with MWPA. So there's a whole group of us working behind the scenes to try to make this partnership successful. But if there's any questions or there's concerns or anything, please reach out to me directly, and you know, I'm available anytime to be able to address any questions you have. And that's it for me. I'll stop sharing and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thanks so much, Jim. I'm glad your voice held out.
Touch and go.
Hey, do we have any questions?
I have a question. I just have a question, Jim. Does this include, when you're talking about the year in advance planning, does it include maintenance of projects that have already been done?
That's a good question. No, I don't think so. I mean, I think ideally we will have talked about what the maintenance planning looks like, you know, in the year that we've done the implementation. So, you know, I think that's a great point, Chief, that now that we're kind of on this treadmill where we have a system that's in place and we're getting these new core projects going, that's a conversation we need to be having with staff of what the maintenance routine is going to look like. And it's something we want to develop together. So, and I think that what the maintenance is going to look like is going to depend year over year. So I think we want to maintain some flexibility about how to maintain those projects. So I don't think we need a year in advance notice, but I think we do want to work together thinking in advance about what the routine and the kind of frequency schedule is going to look like for each of those sites.
And then with regards to, you know, the projects that these agencies bring forward that may be and include Marin County open space lands, are you doing your own planning on your side and looking for opportunities to partner with us? And how does that work and who's doing that?
Yeah, we are. So just as I was saying, we have this list of projects that we submit to the MWPA, or excuse me, to MWPA, Parks and Open Space Commission, each April. And by the way, I didn't put this in the slide today, but this is part of an open data portal, open data program that the county has. This is all public information. There's actually a spreadsheet. I should push this out also, Ann, and maybe in my email to you, I'll provide the link, but I did provide this to the ATC and walk them through how to see all these different projects that we have on our list for each fiscal year. So we have our own internal planning process that basically our staff, our rangers, folks that are in our roads and trails department identify as our needs to conduct every single year. We put that out through the portal. And, right now we are in the process of, if there's projects that look like there's opportunities to be able to partner or figure out how to cost share, then we are submitting those to each of the partner agencies to see if there's ways that we can partner through a leveraging of Measure A and Measure C funds, depending on the situation. But, the timeline we're requesting, our partner agencies to comply with is what we're holding ourselves to as well. I hope that answers your question.
And
Okay,
in
anyone-
addition, we're going to start each season inviting Marin County Parks and other land management agencies to remind us of their internal planning schedules during the December kickoff meetings for work plan development. So you'll hear this again, and the ATC will as well.
Yeah, and this is, I think, this will evolve a little bit. I mean, the timeline I presented today is going to remain firm for our agency. I reached out to the other land managers to see if we could set a goal of today trying to, develop sort of a joint planning process, just as a one-page viewer for every land manager. It's probably not going to be that simple. But that said, in talking to National Park Service and Marin Water, the rough timeline I presented today sounds like it's pretty consistent with what their internal planning process looks like. So I think, like Ann said, as we go back and we were able to present this in future iterations, we'll hopefully have something that's a little bit more jointly presented so that, we can develop a document that's maybe a one-page viewer for land, how to partner with land managers, or some sort of access guide for your staff that isn't too complicated, but, just sets targets and timelines for each of our agencies.
Well, it looks like we're going to open this up to public comment right now. Do we have any members of the public who'd like to comment on the presentation?
Please raise your hand at this time. I see no public comments. Thank you.
Well, we'll close the item to public comment. And is it Mr. Chaka or Chaika?
Chaka.
Chaka. Okay. Thank you so much for presenting and sharing that information with us this morning. I certainly am going to circle back with my staff and kind of share some of this information right away. I'm pretty sure they're already dialed in on it, but just in case they're not, want to be sure they understand the timelines coming up for our next go round this coming January.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And like I said, I'll send this out. This is just meant to be, sort of a reference guide for staff. This shouldn't really be new information, but it may be for some folks. So yeah, please do direct them to the slides that I push out and encourage folks to get in touch if they have any questions.
All right. Thank you much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to action items. The draft fiscal year 2022-23 work plan and budget. Recommendation: receive a summary of updates to proposals submitted for fiscal year 2022-2023 work plan and budget development. Provide feedback and recommend the draft fiscal year 2022-23 work plan and budget for board of director approval. And would that be?
That's me again.
Yep.
Mark's going to join as well. He had to run out for a moment. But I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so hopefully you can see this first slide. Great. So what we'll do today is we'll run through kind of an overview of where we are. There's still some discussion items within this agenda item that we can address as well. And I'll show you the kind of overview of the document and the proposals and the budget, where we are and where to find all of that information. You should have received, oh, Mark's back. You should have received a document that's also attached to this agenda that includes kind of the start of the work plan. And that includes proposals, kind of an outline of all the different proposals, a draft budget for each of the zones that includes the local and the DSpace and the core projects, and draft maps. And all of that will be updated based on input. There are always last minute changes and additions, deletions, modifications to make sure your numbers are square. So I'll start off here. Let's see, I think, Mark, are you available? Do you want to present the budget information?
You bet.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. And so for the JPA-wide core proposals, as we've mentioned in a previous meeting and worked with the Finance Ad Hoc Subcommittee of the Operations Committee, lots of concern appropriately that the JPA-wide budget had grown so large compared to last year. And, part of it was that we had 2 ad hoc subcommittees working on projects that were JPA wide and, really driven to make the best project possible. And so as they worked on those JPA wide proposals, it grew. And then so that obviously decreases the amount that's available for each of the 5 regions. So we worked with the ATC. We also, and with the, like I said, the Finance Ad Hoc Subcommittee of the Operations Committee to reduce some of the JPA-wide core proposals. So the coastal zone environmental compliance process was scrubbed and pushed into the overall environmental compliance. And then you can see that we also dropped the overall environmental compliance by 250,000. So that was a net drop of 350,000. So we're budgeting 750,000 total for environmental compliance. And while this increased to JPA core, it also makes it clearer for each of the projects in the 5 regions exactly what they have to spend, because they won't have to carve out 10% for scoping and compliance. And what wasn't included in that 10% previously is any biological surveys or other surveys that need to be conducted prior to the work after the compliance has been completed, whereas this 750,000 does cover that. So we see it as a net wash. Public education, we'll dig into that a little bit more, but one of the marching orders the Operations Committee did give was to increase our outreach and penetration of our public education. Knowledge and attitude survey. A lot of people have been considering this a public education survey or a metric for public education, but it really is a metric of the influence that we are exerting on our residents through all of our portals, whether it's PubEd, our defensible space evaluations, our community meetings. And so this is going to really give us an idea where we're succeeding in changing knowledges and attitudes and where we're not. And we can start shaping some of our work to improve that down the road. Direct assistance, we originally proposed $860,000 for direct assistance, but the Finance Ad Hoc Subcommittee for Operations felt that this would be better delivered through the member agencies. So we scrubbed that completely. We dropped the fire detection camera coordination, and that's getting cameras to be able to show imagery on our evacuation maps down to $30,000 from $60,000. This is a good benefit for everybody. I think it was well supported, and that's a defensible space inspection app subscription being paid for out of core. If we were to pay for it out of each agency's defensible space budget, that would be a 3.4% decrease in their DSpace budget. And everyone's maxing that out and doing great work getting people out on the ground. Also, some people have actually been putting in for core projects to increase their DSpace work. So we felt it was best to have that as a JPA-wide core project. Our grants program, it's updated cost of $250,000. We'll roll over approximately $400,000 for this year. And that'll be the full suite of DSpace, home hardening. Home hardening this year will have a $5,000 match. DSpace will be $1,000 allowable. And then we'll have a bit of a beta trial for direct assistance built into that. Our Zone Haven subscription is $75,000. We talked about the $750 for environmental costs. Our operational costs, we went from $600,000 to $400,000, and that includes $125,000 for rent, $20,000 for tenant improvements, $20,000 for website and JPA, the work plan portal improvements, $45,000 for our communications, whether it's our work plan development, publishing, our end of year report publishing, creating our strategic plan, so on and so forth. 25,000 for JPA wide training, both for MWPA staff, but also member agency staff, and $100,000 in contingencies. I may have missed a category there, but I think we have it displayed later on. Chipper days, 1.25 million, which is about $100,000 increase from last year, but we've already are seeing an increase in the subscriptions that we had from last year at this time. And then the Regional Wildfire Disaster Preparedness Coordinator, that's 1/3 of the cost for that position. UC Master Gardeners, we originally had it at 125,000, but we were able to decrease it to 75,000 from salary savings from this year. Risk reduction tracking, and that is taking a deep dive into all the data that we are getting from our defensible space evaluations, home hardening, DSpace, our evac route clearing, our shaded fuel breaks, and actually scientifically measuring how much risk that we have reduced, and seeing which projects are doing the best for this risk reduction, so we could tailor future projects to hit the areas that we're struggling, but leverage the areas that we're doing great. And then we added 350,000 to supplement what was in the last 2 years of rollover for the evacuation risk assessment. However, we do anticipate, or we have already gone out for grants. We're somewhat optimistic that we'll get grant funding for that. If we do get grant funding, we would roll that money back into the regions. And that same is true for environmental compliance. We feel especially optimistic about getting grant money for the coastal zone environmental compliance public works plan. And again, we would roll that back into the regions on the percent scales that we have. And when it comes to the environmental compliance, if we underspend on that, again, that'll get rolled back into the core, the regional core budgets, taking into account environmental compliance that has been done in each of the regions. So it's an equitable distribution of that remaining money. And next slide. And then here you can see what was after we did the JPA wide core reduction from the what the regions have. This is what each region had to, as their spending target, and the ATC members work real hard to match these. This is about 2/3 of the core spending that we had last year. But in reality, this for this current fiscal, we are still at less than 50% of the region's spending. So there's going to be a credible amount of rollover for projects from this year to next year. So there's still going to be a tremendous workload on our member agency staffs next year. Next slide. And then I can, if I can speak to many of these items, but we do have Rich Shortall that will be able to expand upon it. But the Firewise support, I think we all understand how important that is. We are at 77 Firewise communities. I think it's 25,000 residences in Marin are part of a Firewise community that is #1 in the nation. I think that's an incredible stat. Our written materials. This is just a way that, to diversify how we're getting the message now. It's not just in the digital or video media, creating written materials that people can have in their hands. Amber Stomp, which we have coming up on May 28th, Fire Safe Marin was actually able to get that completely funded by donations. Outreach to schools is so important. If we want to expand our audience of who we're reaching out to, a lot of times through our students is the best way. And then speaking of expanding our outreach, Adapt to Wildfire campaign. So far, we've been getting excellent reviews, excellent penetration through that. And this is just a continuation of that program. Social media outreach, again, the hits and the metrics that Fire Safe Marin has on how much we are penetrating through social media is incredible. So that project is meant to bring that about. Spring workshops is, we did that similar last year where we had community meetings via Zoom. We could do them in person this year, but I think Zoom actually increases the participation, where we can have the fire professionals from your member agencies interacting with the public, letting the public know exactly what's going on in their region. We continue to have Fire Safe Marin have DSpace program support, and that is working with all of our evaluators with good written materials, but also standardized practices that we are preaching across the entire county. And then the video outreach, yes, it's a big number, but it's actually where we have been getting some of our most penetration out there. The views that we have been getting on the videos and the quality of the videos and what people are learning from them has been fantastic. Bilingual outreach is obviously an important item for us to get into. And then with the website comes maintenance and also being able to respond to inquiries. If we aren't updating the website frequently or responding to questions, then people stop coming to the site to get the information. So it's important to keep updating that. And I think that's all you need from me, Ann.
Great. Thanks, Mark. So what I'd like to do next is give you an overview of the document, kind of where we are now, show you where those proposals are all available on our website, and we can circle back to the public education, ask Rich to answer any questions about any of those items as well. So I'm going to stop screen sharing with this and then show you, hopefully show you our website if my computer decides to comply. Okay, that should do it. Okay, so hopefully you can see our MWPA website. I wanted to point out that we are able to make all of the proposals public, so they're all viewable. If you're wondering if you're missing portions of the document, just click on the JPA portal link in the upper left-hand corner of our home screen. And that takes you to this page where you can choose which proposals to view. So let's go to JPA wide. And Mark had mentioned our operations budget. So in theory, it's here, there it is. So you click on the item here, and then you can view the details that were entered into the portal. And this includes the rent, the website work plan portal work, communications, continuing to work with Grizzly Corps, additional training, R&D, emerging technologies, contingencies, etc. So all of the proposals are visible here for the public as well as our member agencies without having to log in. So what I'd also like to show you is our draft work plan. I'm going to share the document rather than the entire screen. Okay, so hopefully you can see the first page of our draft work plan. And this document currently is around 168 pages. It'll probably end up being more like 250, 300 in the end. This draft reflects the proposals that were submitted in the last, as of maybe 24 hours ago. The first page in this document is the overall budget that you've actually already seen. We've also got some overviews of project locations throughout the JPA, all of the projects submitted as of a couple of days ago. And each zone is called out in the same order of this overall budget. So Central Marin first. And it starts off with the budget numbers as of a couple of days ago. These numbers you have, and feel free to dive into those and let me know if there are any additional edits. I've been working with all the member agencies to make sure that the local and DSpace and core numbers all come to 0 at the bottom of these sheets. Here's a map for the Central Marin Zone and all of the projects that were submitted for the Central Marin Zone, and a key to tell you what projects you're looking at within the map. And then all of the proposals are, and key details about the proposals are listed here. If there are other details that you think are missing, but you'd like to see reflected in this particular document, please do let me know. But all of the details are available through the website and the portal there. So if you scroll through, there are a number of proposals for Central Marin, and all of the zones are reflected in the same way. It probably doesn't make sense for me to scroll through 168 pages at the moment, but you get the idea and you have access to this document. We'll be finishing this document in the next week or so. So please continue to provide any edits, ideas. We'll be fine tuning some of the content. I think the vast majority of the content is generally there, but we'll want to dig in to find any, copy and paste errors, formatting. There are a couple of member agencies who have placeholders in here, but we need additional information about what those kind of local and DSpace projects are. Additionally, you should have received a document with the public education budget numbers, as well as the public education proposals. So you should have that, and that'll be useful during our discussion today. And I'll lean on Rich to answer questions about that. You should have also received a document that includes the overall budget, the JPA wide budget as it stands now, and all of the member agency tables. So you should have that in your inbox and with the agenda, the operations committee agenda. So what we can do now is discuss any of these items in detail, dig into the public education component and ask Rich to clarify any of those, because I know there were some questions there, and discuss further. What the operations committee ideally would do today is to approve the work plan as probably a work in progress that we'll finalize and then send to the board on May 19th. In order to post this document to the website for the board of directors meeting on May 19th, we really need to be finished by May 9th. So we'll be continuing to work on this document for the next week to finalize that and post it and make it public and give the board time to review. So happy to answer questions and dive into any of these topics further.
Well, I'll start with just first a big thank you to Ann and Mark for all the work that you've been putting in, trying to get us to this point well ahead of the timelines we were at last year for submission to the board. There's a lot of work here, clearly. And to Mr. Shortall with Fire Safe Marin, thank you as well for all of the work that you continue to do. And it's impressive. It's an impressive body of work. And I think, as I said last night at our San Rafael City Council meeting, I'm proud to be associated with what's going on here in Marin County. And I think this is the model for what's going to happen in a lot of other communities in the Western Hemisphere. And so we're doing great work here. I did have just one question. I think, Rich, you might be able to help with. This is something that we discussed briefly at the last meeting we had with the Ad Hoc Finance Committee, and it pertained to the video cost and or the reach that we're actually achieving with that sort of cost. I just was curious as to how many videos we're producing for that price point, and what is the audience? I understand there's been an increase in subscription or number of viewers for the video feeds. I'm just curious, is that something that can be controlled, or is that something you foresee escalating over time, given we're increasing the viewership?
Okay, complicated question, good one. Thank you very much. Let me back up for 1 second. So Fire Safe Marin is a relatively small organization. We have 3 full-time people and 2 part-time people. I was asked to try to apportion costs across all the different programs. It's a little bit difficult for us because all of our team pretty much works on all the projects. And so it's sort of a best guesstimate exactly how much time goes into producing a video versus responding to questions from the public, updating the website and whatnot. So those are sort of rough ideas of things. The most requested materials that are coming from FireSafe Marin nowadays are videos. Everything from very short ones that last 30 seconds, animated ones, longer ones, different segments, different varieties and whatnot. And so I don't right this have an exact number of exactly how many videos we produced all year long. I can easily get that for you, but it's a ton of them. And that's what people are asking for, because the videos are lending themselves to sort of the modern way of communication. As you'll see in our proposal, there's a lot of interest now in doing a lot. We're doing a lot more with social media. So when you're putting out things on Instagram or even Facebook or whatnot, short videos come across very well. It even surprises me that of all the channels that we put out there, the most utilized or the most people who get visitors is actually our YouTube channel. So last month, I gave you a lot of data on metrics. So in a 3-month period, we had 149,000 people at the slowest time of the year view our materials. Of that, 56,000 of them were watching videos that we've created on YouTube. And that's just what they're seeing on our YouTube channel. That's not counting the videos that they're watching on our Instagram feeds and whatnot, plus what all of our partner agencies are sending out the same information. So I do think video is going to be more and more important. I've noticed that there's less demand for written materials. I was out at the an event, the Rotary event, and everybody's tabling there. Everybody I tried to give written materials to, and I think they look really good. Everybody goes, well, you know, do you have a link to that, or can I just get a something on my camera for that or whatever? So we're really shifting that direction. And it's not just our staff time that goes into that. There's quite a bit it's involved in video production. So I think that the return on investment for that is really substantial. If it's going to, if there was going to be any increase in the future, there would be reductions somewhere else. So I don't see this as a growing thing. If I could just add one last thing, is the real big change from last year in our request, and this is really in response to the operations committee, is twofold. One is the ADAPT campaign. And the ADAPT campaign is brand new. It's not a static campaign. There's video components to that also. And that's sort of the big jump up from last year, that, and then more work in the world of bilingual outreach. Both of those require video production to make them work. That's really a big part of it. So the videos really kind of cut across the board. And I don't think that the 200,000-ish number is the exact number, because it doesn't really work that way. But I think it reflects the fact that that's become a pretty substantial part of what we're doing these days, because that's what it takes to reach people.
Thank you. That was very helpful and informative. I appreciate that. Does anyone else have any questions of Ann, Mark, or anyone
I
else?
see Dan's hand up.
Yeah, I think this is probably from Mark and Anna. It looks like the way the education budget's been created is similar to the way the different zones have submitted a budget to you. So FireSafe Marin appears to have sort of generated what they think are the costs for all these different activities and turn them into you. Can you explain the contracting process to me? Does FireSafe Marin already have a contract for all of these services? Is it an open-ended agreement that they get all the funding, or will these individual activities be subject to bid?
We have not had a contract with FireSafe Marin in the past, but we intend to enter into contract with them this year with the clear deliverables. And then we would invite any agency, nonprofit who wishes to perform these types of services for us are available to put in proposals through the work plan development process, like such as last year, there was a presentation from LRAD soliciting if member agencies wanted to have an LRAD type program as part of their proposals. We also had a outreach from West Marin Compost with a $1.25 million request to increase their facilities out in West Marin. It really never made it through the planning process, but so we have that availability for nonprofits to reach out to us. And then, like I said, we will enter into a contract, a one-year contract with Fire Safe Marin with deliverables.
So these different activities that are in the budget for education, they will go out to public bid? I'm not clear.
No, it won't go out to public bid. They've gone, Fire Safe Marin has submitted these as proposals to the MWPA of what they could provide for us. And, remember that when MWPA was created, I think, Dan, you might have been part of this decision, was that we felt that we wanted to leverage the outreach that Fire Safe Marin and the audience that Fire Safe Marin already had for our public education rather than duplicating it ourselves. And so that's just a continuation of using their audience and their outreach they already have.
Well, I was part of that, but I feel compelled to once again request an opinion from council under section 1090 of the California Fair Political Practices Act of the way we're doing this, because it just makes me really uncomfortable to have my name on a vote on a budget that a nonprofit is submitting that I think is supposed to be competitive.
Okay, we'll definitely.
I mean, it's almost $1 million. And I don't like the idea that my name's on that vote. And I have never gotten a coverage. I've never seen an opinion from council about this.
I'll follow up with council on
it. And that's not a reflection on the vendor. It's not it's a process question.
I get you.
Thank you for stating that, Dan. I also am in kind of the same lane as you are. So thank you for bringing that to the attention to the group.
Okay, do we have any other comments or questions that anyone would like to ask of Mark and Ann and or Mr. Shortoff? Looks like Rick has his hand.
Add one more thing, and I appreciate Dan and what everybody's saying about that, of course, whatever's appropriate. I think when we're looking at the ADAPT campaign, which is the big increase from last year, I just want to point out that this campaign is going to be very carefully monitored with a ton of metrics. We've already reached out with some preliminary discussions with some ad agency types to help inform wise decisions and whatnot. I really see this as a pilot project that may not get future funding because maybe it's not worth doing anymore, or people may say it's great, let's keep it going and whatnot. So I don't necessarily see this as a year in, year out expense. We're going to watch it really closely. As you know, we give detailed monthly reports on everything that we're doing, and you can expect to receive a lot of reports on the metrics and what we're finding out from that campaign. And then I think next year would be time to take a very serious look about whether you wanted to keep that going or not. So that might be something to think about when you're thinking about, in part, why did the price go up, and is this going to be ongoing forever?
Thank you for that. Thank you. So it looks like there may not be any more comment here. Can we open it up to public comment at this time?
Yes, is there anyone in the public that would like to speak on this item? Rebecca Suggs, go ahead.
Thanks, Lori. I just wanted to give a shout out for Fire Safe Marin on the huge increase in the Firewise communities and the amount of people that are involved in this community in that effort. Fire Safe Marin does a lot of support for Firewise communities, monthly meetings for the Firewise leaders, the signs that go up around the the county in the communities, that advertising what's going on with Firewise, with advertise. It's another method of advertising for the community to be fire safe. I don't know that that effort gets publicized a lot other than by the Firewise communities themselves. But it's I think it's a huge effort within the community to remain visible. And thanks, Rich, for keeping that going.
Anyone else wishing to speak on the work plan and budget, please raise your hand. I see none at this time. Thank you.
It looks like Mr. Shortall has his hand up again.
Sorry, one more thing to add, because just thank you, Rebecca. A number that I never presented before, because it just recently came to us related to Firewise, I think is of interest to the group. So each year, the Firewise communities report the amount of hours they put in and what the financial equivalent of that is. So our 78 sites did 211,197 hours of volunteer work last year. And between that and other money they spend, the total investment was $29,995,920 coming out of our Firewise communities. So I'm really proud of the Firewise communities. And that is a substantial leveraging of all the work that MWPA and everybody else is trying to accomplish.
Thank you for that information. Thank you very much. If we have no more public comment, I think we're going to close this item to public comment. I just want to thank Ann and Mark again for all the work that you've been putting in to get us to this point. This is phenomenal and really inspired by all the work that we're doing and we're going to be able to do this coming fiscal year. Ready to go to action item B.
Do we need to take a vote on 8A? Mark or Ann?
Oh, okay.
We need a motion and a first, and it's to recommend the draft work plan and budget to the board of directors for approval.
I'll make a motion.
Novato seconds.
Auto. Okay, Bolinas Fire,
Yes.
City of San Rafael,
Yes.
City of Larkspur,
Yes.
County of Marin,
Yes.
Inverness,
Yes.
Kentfield Fire,
Just a point of order, after a motion and a second, we should have discussion before we go to roll call vote. And the reason why I'm bringing that up now is back to Dan's point in regards to, the legal opinion.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with, I'm voting on the budget as a whole, but I do think the way the budget is being prepared may not be entirely in line with that section of the law.
And I do have a call with council on this topic after this meeting.
So Lori, can we postpone the vote, the roll call vote, and go back to discussion on this?
yes,
there-
go ahead and open it for discussion, and we'll go back and take roll call.
Okay, let's open the item for discussion now. I think someone mentioned there's a procedural concern with how the budget is being developed. Is that something we need to discuss right now at this point, or is this a future conversation?
I'm willing, I've put on the record my concern, and I'm willing to vote for the number, with the understanding that the expenditure of that money is subject to consideration and process later on.
Chief White, and that's exactly to my point. And I think Dan, clarified that for the group so that we have that captured. So thank you, Dan.
Absolutely. And so Director Brown's indicated he's going to reach out and try to get legal opinion on this as well. So once you receive that legal opinion, Mark, will you communicate back with the group so we have some information even as we move forward?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
And
Thank
it
you for
may be
that.
that we
Krista has-
resolve that issue before the board takes action.
I mean, Darren can modify the motion to come into alignment with what Dan and Mark are saying. I mean, Fire Safe Marin is a nonprofit group that more times than not has done magic with next to no funding. And basically it's a bootstrap, organization that is uniquely positioned to get the word out, to maximize the messaging and the work and the goodwill that's out there. But I do agree with Dan that we need to verify, there may be something about how they go about their printing of the materials, for example, where they get a competitive bid for the materials that are produced or something like that, a way to ensure that they can demonstrate that the funding is being used most efficiently. But I have great confidence in what they've done historically and where they are now with what they're proposing.
So should we make a suggested modification?
And Krista has her hand up as well.
Okay, Krista, before I start, please.
Hey, thank you. Just a question about the history here. So is the funding that's close to $1 million, isn't that done by contract with Fire Safe Marin? Is that something that the board, is there a contract?
There will be a contract if the budget is approved for that.
Has there been a contract in the past?
There has not.
So the authority gives a check to Fire Safe Marin without a contract?
Correct. They have been invoicing us based on the approval of the work plan and the proposal that Fire Safe Marin put in for the work plan. We've been paying based on that approval and invoices with full accountability.
So at some point, the full board now will have a contract with Fire Safe Marin with the scope of work that equals the just under $1 million. Is that how the process is going to work from this point forward?
That is the intent.
Okay. And so this budget starts July 1. So when will that go to the board, the contract?
We would be able to get that contracted to the board. So the budget gets approved in May. We would be able to bring the contract to the board in June.
Okay. And then if it's going to be professional services, and I guess I'm not familiar, Dan, with the law that you say that might exist about, are you saying it's about the
section 1090 says that you shouldn't be participating in decision making if you in any way financially gain from the decision, and it extends to nonprofits. And so I've just never felt comfortable that Fire Safe, to me, Mark should be proposing a number like $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
You should be saying, we have a vendor we love. I don't even care if you go to the board and get permission to sole source the work, but there's process for this, and this has never felt right, the way this is being done. And we need to grow up as an agency now. And this is before the board votes, which is where the actual decision would ultimately take place. This should get clarified and cleaned up.
So is the action right now to approve the budget, which includes the $1 million for this function?
Well, we don't approve. We're just a recommendation. It's an advisory.
Okay, so the action. So it's we're advising the board and to include this amount of money for this purpose. Not necessarily.
That's why Chief Comey and I were saying, I think just getting it on the record that we think this is an issue before the board votes, it gets cleaned up. I think it's sufficient, but it should get addressed by council.
Right. Well, I'm supportive of if we need to change the motion so that it's not identified as Fire Safe Marin, but rather as the function of education with that amount of money. Is that a way that it could be handled?
Yeah, I think we're kind of all landing at the same statement.
So would Fire Safe Marin be taken out of the table And instead, I can't remember what the table said, but can the table just describe public education and not have fire safe Marin? Is that what it says now, Anne, or?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Well, the table that talks about the funding that we're going to be advising the board to consider in the budget, does it actually have fire safe Marin next to the public education, or is it just that function, public education and whatever? Does it say fire safe Marin? I don't have it in front of me.
Right, let me
Right.
show you the overall budget. I'm just pulling that up. So the overall budget currently for JPA-wide proposals includes public education without fire safe Marin listed. That's how it's listed right now.
So then is there a problem with that, Dan, going forward as is, and then with the expectation that the staff is going to bring back a contract to the board?
I think that all those questions need to be addressed by council. I don't have I've run into this code section so many times, and I just know the attorney ultimately has to issue an opinion. So I think that's what we should do. But I'm okay with saying we all agree the public education budget needs to be significant. So I don't have a problem with the number. And advancing it, having noted that before the final vote occurs, we should get an opinion letter from our council or direction from council on what to do.
You can make that part of the motion, can't you?
That's a long motion now.
I know. Or at least,
I don't understand. I don't understand why it actually, I mean, yeah, it's good to know what the attorney has to say about it, but isn't it good governance practice not to bring forward a contract for services? And whatever, if the staff is recommending that it be sole source to fire safe Marin or via an RFP or something, isn't that something that we as a advisory group could say right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could just say that whatever the 988,000 or whatever the number is, that's the budget number that we're approving.
So let me ask the
recommending.
question. If we're trying to introduce sole source at this point, I think you've got to go through a series of things that may not be able to get this launched before the fiscal year begins, given we're already into May. And so my question would be, would it make sense to make the recommendation on behalf of Fire Safe Marin pending a contract that we're looking to enter into, and then discuss later whether or not there's going to be an RFP process for competitive bids, or whether or not it's going to be something that is designed specifically for someone who has the reach and penetration that a Fire Safe Marin has, so that we're assured that we're going to get the quality we're looking to get moving forward year after year. I'd hate to open this up to bid and then someone come in and provide a competitive bid, but not really have the ability to do the public outreach that we need. And so I think this kind of creates a little more complication for us right now. If we're putting too many rules in place on ourselves with such a short turnaround timeline. I certainly understand why we want to modify the motion. I just want to make sure we're doing the motion properly so that everyone's in alignment on what those next steps should look like and why.
I'm just suggesting that it be up to the staff to decide when it comes to spending when it comes to the public education budget, to bring it to the board with what they believe is what their recommendation is, whether it's Marin, fire safe, to continue with fire safe Marin. But that it goes forward as a contract, not as, I guess, how it's been done in the past. Anyways, I'm done. Thank you.
Mark, you're muted.
Yeah, I keep double clicking for some reason on the mute button. My apologies. Can I take a stab at making a motion, what I think I'm hearing from this group? A motion to approve the budget pending legal opinion and creation of a professional services agreement with FireSafe Marin.
No, I'd like to make it a simpler motion.
Okay,
I have
go for it.
I have a document that's the PDF's called Draft Budget, All Zones, and JPA Wide Ops, right? My motion is that we approve pages 1 and 2 of that document in terms of recommending that those numbers advance to the board. You can put all the supporting documentation together after you talk to council. But I don't have a problem with the number 988,000 being in the recommended budget.
I like even simpler.
So, but somebody has to take the old motion off the table first.
I'll take the old motion off the table and entertain a new motion. Mr.
Does the second agree with the taking the motion off the table?
I believe that was Chief Tyler.
Well, it was Darren's motion, I think, was it? Maybe, I thought it was Darren's and I seconded it, but when you're saying pages 1 and 2, Dan, are you just talking about budget page 1 and 2, or you?
Yeah.
Because this is work plan and budget is what we're trying to move as a recommendation.
All right, well, I'll approve this. I'll recommend this document because this document doesn't actually have the breakdown of the education in it. So how about that? I move we recommend the document that's labeled Draft Budget, All Zones, and JPA Wide Ops.
Well, I just don't want to hold up the rest of the work plan, because there's considerable work that happens ahead of time, knowing that the funding is going to occur, and I just wouldn't want to hold that up.
But isn't all the work plan in this document in terms of the budget numbers? So if we're recommending it, then the people know we're recommending the number. I don't know. I overcomplicated it. Sorry, guys.
Wait, no, I think we
I
just,
think
Bill
the
needs
JPI
to pull the second. Chief Tyler needs to pull the second. We need to make a new proposal, or Dan can word it. Keep it simple. We move the items forward. That's our intent here as the ops group. We're not policy, so we're moving it forward with the recommendation that go to council to clean up the agreement and make sure that it meets the law and the process. So Bill, you just need to pull your first one, and then should be moving the draft work plan and the proposed budget to the next level with that
Okay, so
caveat that
I'm pulling
legal has to
my
look at it.
second. I'm pulling my second, Jason. That's what I'm doing.
Thank you.
Well, that's your choice, but yeah, we were halfway through voting, so we've just got to pull that and start a new motion.
Yes.
Okay, I will withdraw my second to Darren White's motion.
Okay, so with that procedurally, we're ready to entertain the new modified motion. Mr. Schwartz, would you be willing to share that brief motion with us once more?
All right, I believe we should approve in terms of recommending to the board the budget numbers that are reflected in the document that says draft budget, all zones, and JPA wide ops, which if I read this document correctly, it provides confirmation that our body supports all of the funding allocated for the various work programs.
Thank you. And can we get a second to that motion?
Well, it was a difficult discussion. Thank you all for having this discussion, and I would be happy to second that motion.
Thank you.
I will take a roll call vote. Bolinas Fire District,
Yes.
City of San Rafael,
Yes.
Campfield Fire,
Yes.
Novato Fire,
Aye.
Stinson Beach,
Yes.
Town of Ross,
Yes.
City of Larkspur,
Yes.
County of Marin Fire,
Yes.
Sleepy Hollow Fire,
Before I vote, I just would like to point out, I have abstained from every vote that ever has an impact on Fire Safe Marin. And I've never advocated for Fire Safe Marin funding. I've simply responded to questions about the program. So with that, I will again abstain.
thank you. City of Mill Valley, they're absent. Inverness Fire,
Yes.
Muir Beach CSD, Muir Beach here,
I think they had to drop off.
okay, Southern Marin Fire,
Yes.
Town of Fairfax.
Yes.
Passes with one abstention. Thank you.
Okay, I believe we're now ready to move to item B, Ecologically Sound Practices Partnership Document. We have a recommendation to receive a summary of the Ecologically Sound Practices Partnership Document, provide feedback and make recommendation for Board of Directors consideration.
And Darren, I just want to say before we pop over, I still have this feeling that we have not yet now approved a work plan. And I don't know if we're going to have to come back and do a special meeting or what, but I did think that that was the responsibility of the ops group, was to approve a budget and work plan. So just for the record.
So maybe I missed something in the motion that was carried. Did we not specifically address the work plan, or was our focus primarily on the budget aspect?
It was the budget aspect. I didn't hear anything about a
Okay.
work plan. I'm
You know what?
sorry.
That's fine.
Dan, do you have? Dan, you didn't mention work plan in the motion.
I focused on this funding document. If there's another document, then maybe Chief Tyler wants to make a motion. I'm happy to second whichever document needs to be approved.
Dan, is it, if I could clarify, is it the document that's entitled Draft Work Plan All Zones 05322?
Mine says draft budget all zones and draft JPA wide ops 050322.
Okay. Then that,
You have to tell me it has all the line items for all the work plan stuff, doesn't it? That's what it looks like.
yeah, it does. So I think, Bill, your concern is satisfied, because the document he's looking at, that he's referring to, lists each of the individual projects and the dollar value that's next to it.
Technically speaking, do we have to issue the words work plan within that motion to be sure?
I think in Dan's motion, he mentioned the document, so the document itself should be sufficient.
Suffice. Okay.
And also, I did hear him talk about the individual project line items in the spreadsheets.
Okay, so it was not referencing just page 1 and 2 then. It was the entire document.
That was my understanding.
I changed it after that got pointed out. Yes, full document.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. Appreciate it.
Okay, just want to make sure we're good and sound on that item before we move on to item B. Any questions, any concerns? Seeing none, we'll move on to, the item passes. We're going to move on to Ecologically Sound Practices Partnership Document. We're going to receive a summary of the Ecologically Sound Practices Partnership Document, provide feedback, and make recommendation for the Board of Directors consideration. At this time, who do we have?
I'll be presenting that item.
Yeah.
So hopefully you can see my slides here. As many of you are aware, the Ecologically Sound Practices Partnership was created really before the MWPA even existed. And that was a way to reach out to environmental organizations in Marin County and think through how they'd like to participate in Measure C and the MWPA after Measure C passed. So that group was invited to draft a set of recommended best practices for vegetation management and other projects that MWPA would be working on and Measure C would be funding. So those organizations came together, worked together for actually a very long time, and drafted a set of recommendations and delivered that to us last year in 2021. Since then, we've been working with these environmental stakeholders to think through how to make the document feasible, consistent with Measure C language and JPA language, consistent with environmental laws and regulations, etc. And so we reviewed it with legal counsel, both CEQA legal counsel and also internal legal counsel. And we provided edits to the ESP partnership on a number of occasions. We went back and forth for a number of months. Started reaching out to the ATC in February and provided some updates there, got some more input from members of the ATC in February and again in March and then again in early April, and incorporated those edits. So in April, on the 28th, the ATC reviewed the document again with the suggested edits, and then voted to go ahead and approve the document for the operations committee to consider. The next step would be approving the document and recommending board consideration. So this document is not legally binding, but it's recommended best practices for us to consider as we implement projects around Marin County. We added some, just to summarize some of the edits to this document, and the document is included in your agenda, so you should have a copy of it with red lines. We added clarity that the document is meant to be flexible and provide guidance rather than being legally binding. We added clarity that residents should defer to their, say, local fire agency or fire code or defensible space inspection as their ultimate guidance for defensible space work, etc. We added flexibility in the language to make sure that we have the flexibility to incorporate best practices that are in this document where appropriate. And so I wanted to quickly show you the document in case you haven't had a chance to review it, and just highlight a couple of sections here. This is the document that you have in your agenda packet. And this is a list of people who participated in the process at one point or another. In the end, it was a small core of representatives who worked with myself and council and others. I'm just highlighting a few of the edits just to demonstrate some of the types of edits that we made, including, living, evolving, flexible set of recommended best practices on this page in the introductory section. Additional information may, at the discretion of the MWPA, help projects be implemented in a more ecologically sound way than required law. So identifying that these practices sometimes go above and beyond what's required by law, and we have the discretion to incorporate those where appropriate. The document, just as an overview, goes into vegetation management first, and then carbon management. So thinking through kind of the carbon landscape, and again, incorporating, highlighted here, that ultimately we want the recommendations in this document to be consistent with defensible space recommendations, local fire code, guidance from local fire agencies. So made sure to incorporate that language. And then there's guidance related to defensible space. And so that adding that language was really key. So for example, here, to be consistent with current guidance, made sure to add follow current guidance from your local fire district or defensible space inspection report to ensure, etc. So we, ATC members, legal counsel, CEQA counsel, and our environmental consultants went through this with a fine-tooth comb and worked closely with ESP representatives to make sure that we ended up with a document that we could live with, and that also reflected environmental principles from the community so that we can continue our good faith partnership with environmental representatives. And, ultimately it was a really good process. I think we learned a lot from each other in terms of our what's feasible on our end and what's desirable on the end of environmental stakeholders. So it was a really positive process. At this point, we have a document that includes a number of edits from environmental consultants, from myself, from legal counsel, and from members of the ATC. So today we can decide to move this item on to the board for board consideration. And that's it for my report.
Thank you very much, Ann. Well, does anyone have any questions on that before I open it up to public comment? Seeing none, I'd like to open it up to public comment at this time.
Yes, there is one person that would like to speak. Larry Mikas, go ahead, please. Minicus.
Good morning, folks. I'll speak on behalf of Belle, who I'm sure would be speaking today, but I believe she's still in New York away visiting relatives. So I just want to say really thank you to everyone that's been involved in this, and particularly to Ann and to Bruce Goins, who have been key in this, what really is a partnership. And it really has felt like a partnership all the way through this entire process. And I want to thank Jason really for starting this whole thing, getting this off the ground through really what was a handshake agreement in the beginning. And that's really all I need to say. Just really appreciate all the work that has gone into this. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional public comment?
Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? I see none at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll close the item to public comment at this time. It appears I have some camera difficulty here, so I'm going to be voice only and kind of Wizard of the Oz type of thing. There's not a motion or second required to accept that report and move it forward. Is that correct? I just want to make sure procedurally I'm not missing something again.
Yes, there is. As a recommendation to recommend to the board of directors for consideration.
Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion. Would anyone like to provide a motion on that recommendation?
I'll move that item, and just want to very briefly thank ESP group and what started off as learning there were so many different environmental groups and how we could involve them in this process of MWPA, and them coming together and helping us better understand what the concerns were and how to address those. And thanking Larry for stepping up today, and of course Belle, who's not there, but the many other people that made this a success. So happy to move it.
Thank you, Chief Weber. Can we find a second?
I'll make a second. Tom Welch, Southern Marine.
Thank you, Chief Welch. Okay, roll call to vote.
Is there any discussion prior to the vote?
I just want to show additional comments of support. It really is a partnership, and there's been a lot of trust that's been built where once there was, concern that and trying to get everybody on the same page, and it's been phenomenal. The ATC is completely behind it, so I want to thank everybody for their work, especially Jason and the ESP folks. I second the motion.
The motion, okay. Motion was made by Weber and seconded by Welch.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. We already opened up to public comment. We closed the public comment. Looks like we're moving on down to committee reports.
Let me take a vote on that. A roll call vote. Is that okay, Chairman?
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Yes,
That's
indeed.
okay. That's okay. Bolinas Fire,
Yes.
City of San Rafael,
Yes.
Kentfield Fire,
Yes.
Novato Fire District,
Aye.
Stinson Beach,
Yes.
Town of Ross,
Yes.
City of Larkspur,
Yes.
County of Marin. County of Marin.
Yes.
Sleepy Hollow,
Yes.
Town of, let me see, there's absent. Inverness,
Yes.
Muir Beach. They're absent. Southern Marin Fire,
Yes.
Town of Fairfax.
Yes.
Passes by unanimous vote of those in attendance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to item number 9, committee reports. Citizen Oversight Committee.
And I don't believe we have an update from the COC today, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, Lucy reached out and said that they would not have a report today.
Okay, well, we won't need open and closing of public comments for that reason. And what about the advisory technical committee's recommendation to receive a report?
We do
Would that
have
be-
Ruben Martin in the attendees.
Chief Martin, Lynn Osgood, or Mike Swayze, perhaps?
I do see Ruben.
Ruben, would you like to give a report?
No report. I just wanted to pass along and thank Mark Brown and Ann Kraylock for all the work that they've been doing. And then for every single member agency and your staff members that aside from doing all of their assigned duties, have been working diligently to put together these work plans. And we recommend that they get approved so that way we can go ahead and get all the work needed started throughout the county to try to reduce the wildfire risk that and potential that's out there for all of our agencies and all of our citizens. So other than that, I have nothing else to report.
Thank you, Chief Martin. Moving on to item number 10, committee members' request regarding future agenda items. Do we have any future agenda items that anyone would like to place a request for? No, appears to be none. Well, actually, I'm wondering, should we actually put that discussion we had earlier on the future agenda, or is that just going to be a separate discussion email going out to the group regarding the legal opinion we sought?
Not sure about procedurally, but the operations committee is not scheduled to meet again until the next work plan development process. It could be that we create an ad hoc to circle back on this, or we could circle back with the chair and vice chair and have that discussion. Mark, thoughts on procedure, how you'd like to handle that?
Oh, we're going to get the opinion and the process through council worked out in the next few days, and it'll be presented to the board. I think unless there's any significant questions, we may not need to involve the operations committee with it.
Okay. That being said, we won't place it on a future agenda item. And again, Ann and Mark, thank you so much for all your work. We look forward to hearing back from the request we had regarding legal opinion. And at this time, I'm ready to adjourn the meeting unless there's anything further from anyone before we go. No, seeing that, we'll close and end the meeting at what appears to be 11:48.
Take care, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.